Namaskar, hello and a very warm welcome to CIET and CRT's special live phone-in interactive program. This is an online training on the theme that's safety and security in digital space. Today is the day 3 of this entire training, and the topic we are going to discuss is psychological aspects of cyber safety and security. Let me tell you that today is the first Wednesday of this month, that is June, and we are also celebrating Cyber Jagrukta Divas as always. So in this, we try and make you aware of all the cyber threats, of all the security measures that you can take and stay safe at your own place and use internet as freely as possible. If you're watching us on eVidya channel number 6 to channel number 12 and you have any questions, any queries, reach out to us. This online training is going on, and this is the third day. It started on 5th of June and it will stay till 9th of June. I will let you know each and every part about this series towards the end of this program. So till now, let me tell you that we are extremely proud of the fact that we assumed India's G20 presidency and would convene the G20 Leaders Summit for the first time in the country this year, that is 2023. A nation deeply committed to democracy and multilateralism, India's G20 presidency would be a watershed moment in her history, as it seeks to play an important role by finding global pragmatic solutions for the well-being of all, and in doing so, manifest its true spirit of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Or should I say, the world is one family. Let me also tell you that Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam translates to one earth, one family, one future. And that is exactly the theme of this year's India's G20 presidency. So let me tell you that as part of Jan Bhagidari events, CIET NCRT is conducting various activities online. And this 5-hour online training is a part of it. Started from 5th of June and till 9th of June, it will go on. Sharp from 4 p.m. we'll start, and till 5 o'clock it will go on. Every day we have a new expert and they will talk about the concerned topic. And like you all know that this training is actually to leverage the understanding of teachers, students, teacher educators, administrators and other stakeholders of school education on the safety and security in digital space for teaching, learning and assessment. Let me tell you that if you have any queries, any questions, you can simply contact us, and the number would be 8800440559. So please participate in this program and you can register yourself and ask your questions. You can also ask your questions through our YouTube channel, that is NCERT Official. In the live chat box, write down your questions, your queries and share them with us. Let me tell you that we also have an email ID, and that is cybersafety@ciet.nic.in. So there are multiple mediums through which you can connect with us and you can raise your questions. Now let me please introduce the expert we have for today, and he is Dr. Yatanpal Singh Valhara. Sir, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you for having me for this session.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure. Sir is an additional professor of psychiatry from AIIMS, New Delhi. And he'll be talking about all those psychological aspects of cyber safety and security. So let's begin this conversation without further ado. And I would like to ask sir, what is it that we are going to learn in this particular program? What is it that the viewers are going to understand in this particular program?
Okay, so as you very rightly mentioned, that this session is focused on a very important theme, and that theme is in context of cyber safety and security. In today's session, we are going to focus on the psychological aspects of our presence in this digital world and digital space. In terms of this session, I have divided this session into 3 sections. I'll begin by giving you an overview. What are the different dimensions of cyber safety and security, particularly from the context of psychological perspectives. That is, what all issues or what all themes are relevant in this context. Then I'll move on to the second part of my session, which focuses on the specific psychological issues that people can experience and encounter when they are in digital space. And finally, I'll move on to what we can do in order to ensure our psychological well-being while we are in the digital space. So this is how I have planned this presentation, and I'll take you through all these three sections in this sequence. Now let's begin by understanding what are the different dimensions of cyber safety and security. This is a broad area to understand, and when I present these different dimensions of cyber safety and security, please remember that the perspective that I'm trying to bring in is from the psychological issue perspectives. So there are certain issues and themes that I may not elaborate in details or greater details, so to say, but I'll try to touch upon different dimensions that we need to be aware of if we are thinking and wanting to build our psychological resilience in digital spaces. Now, the first and the foremost is something that most of us are often aware of in context of cyber safety and security is those issues or those concerns that are related to some kind of a fraud that gets committed against us when we are using a digital space. For example, we may be a victim of a scam, a financial scam. We all have heard of terms like phishing, where we are sent a link through an email or these days through social media as well. And when we click on that link, either some of our data gets stolen or there is a financial transaction that takes place which we did not intend to carry out. Another term that you might have heard of very commonly is that of malware. This again is something that gets installed on our system, which is not good for our system, which kind of runs in the background and tries to capture and hack the data that we have on our system. This is one set of dimensions that we need to be aware of in context of cyber safety and security. The other dimension that we need to be aware of is in a slightly different realm. Now, in this particular dimension, there is no link that is being sent to us, or there is no financial transaction that is being carried out, or the data per se is not being stolen from our end. But what happens is that we experience certain adverse events, or we go through a set of these adverse events which are not good for us, which are not pleasant for us. And one of those elements in this dimension is what is called as cyberbullying. Now, bullying is not a new term. You all must be aware of this term. When something like bullying happens in cyberspace, the term that is used is cyberbullying. Now, cyberbullying simply defined is repeated hostile or aggressive behavior which is performed by an individual or a group of individuals which targeted at some other person. And the aim is to inflict some kind of harm or discomfort using an electronic or digital tools. Now, this is quite similar to bullying in physical world or in-person setting. But when we talk of cyberbullying, it's qualitatively slightly different because usually in a physical world setting, the power dynamics between the person who is the victim and the person who is the perpetrator are quite different from cyberbullying. Here, the physical strength probably doesn't matter that much. It's being done at a very psychological level. Can be done at a very great distance. You need not be in contact or in front of the person who is trying to bully you. More than one individual, which are located at different locations, can participate in the process together. So it becomes a much more serious or a much more significant kind of an event in context of bullying. Another element on this dimension is what is known as cyber stalking. Now, what cyber stalking simply means is that an individual uses internet or other kind of electronic devices as a means to stalk or harass an individual or a group of individuals or even an organization. So what is happening is that you don't want to be pursued by this particular person, but against your wish and will, you are being followed. This person is trying to keep a track of your daily routine, whatever you are posting, what kind of content you are accessing, and in this process, it's making you uncomfortable. and if it escalates, it can even be unsafe, not just psychologically, but even physically in certain cases. The third element on this dimension is what is known as cyber grooming, which is a slightly different concept. Here, a person is trying to befriend somebody, usually a person of younger age, maybe a child or even an adolescent. And the aim is that they are trying to pursue this to lead to a physical meeting with an overall aim of kind of committing some kind of a sexual abuse. Now, this again happens using the help of digital space. Again, a very uncomfortable, very unpleasant experience. Not just unpleasant, but a very unsafe kind of a situation that we're talking about, especially because it eventually leads onto a physical interaction with the perpetrator, and it can have very significant adverse consequences, both psychologically as well as physically for the victim. Now, this was the second dimension that I mentioned. Now let's move to the third kind of dimension, what is important in context of cyber safety and security, especially from the psychological perspective. Now we know when we walk on sand, we leave behind our footprints. Something very similar happens in digital space as well. Whenever we access internet, there is a log that gets registered, or whether it's a web, a laptop, a desktop, or an app. And whenever we are sharing any information, it can be a text, an image, a video file, we leave behind some footprint, which is known as digital footprint. Now, as compared to the footprint on the sand, which usually gets removed after a while because of the elements of the nature and environment, a digital footprint is slightly different. Even if we try to delete that content at our end, at least a part, if not all of it, still stays in the digital space in one way or the other. So what it means is that what I have posted today, and even if I have kind of deleted it at my end, it may stay or it may be accessible to others if they have those means of trying to access this content, because it is there somewhere in the digital world. So what it means is that if I'm sharing something, or if I'm putting some content out there, which I don't want to be there anymore or any longer, even if I try to delete it, it might not get deleted in totality. So what happens is there may be some content that you posted in the past, but it kind of comes back, it resurfaces in a way or in a manner which is not helpful for you, maybe even against you, and that again can lead to adverse psychological experiences for the person who is experiencing or going through it. So this is the next kind of dimension in this context. Another thing that can happen while we are in cyberspace and that can impact our psychological health is the issue of identity theft. What this means is that there are individuals who are trying to secure or gather data on you. They may even be trying to hack into your systems, your electronic devices, to the extent that they even want to assume your identity in the digital world. They may pose as you online. They may pose as you, not as a person, but even as an individual who has certain accesses, maybe some financial instruments in terms of, say, credit card access or your social media accounts. And they may pose that it's you who is holding those accounts or making those comments or doing those transactions. And this identity theft, again, can be very damaging for the person, and not just in terms of the financial losses that you can incur, not just the loss of reputation or the negative experience in terms of the way people react to what you are posting or commenting there, but at your end, it may make you feel very bad, it may feel you frustrated, and many other psychological issues that can come up that I'll discuss in the next session in greater details. Another kind of dimension that we need to be aware of is of slightly different nature. Now, in this particular dimension, what happens is the person is actually engaging at his or her end in an illegal or inappropriate behavior. This could be making a comment which is carrying an element of hate towards somebody, an individual or a group of individuals or an organization, or you may be posting an image or a picture or something that is targeted at some other person with an aim to kind of malign them, spreading false information about them. And this again When it comes to surface, many of these instances or these actions or activities are illegal by the by the law of the land. And once you go through this process, when these proceedings takes place against you, you again can experience those negative psychological consequences. And that again, I'll be discussing in greater details slightly later. Another important thing that we have been aware of, but we might not be paying as great attention as we should be while we are in digital spaces, the issue of the copyright infringement and illegal downloads. Many times we tend to believe whatever we can see online is free or has a free access, but that may not be the case. And it's quite easy or simple to understand because it's very simple to the physical or in-person setting. If you see something on road, that doesn't simply mean that since you can see it, you can access it, you can touch it, you can own it, or you can take it with you. The same happens with the digital space as well. Simply because you can access a content, you can listen to a song or watch a movie, it doesn't give you the ownership rights, or it doesn't give you the rights to download it or distribute it or forward it. And this again is some kind of a behavior which can eventually end up you in trouble and will make you go through those all negative psychological experiences. And finally, another dimension that is being talked about more often these days, people are realizing this, that while digital space offers us lots of goods, it's a very great means of doing so many good things, to having so many great experiences, a very great means to communicate and interact with people or the world around us. If we engage excessively, and what I mean by that, I'll come to that slightly later. This again can be problematic. If we are spending a lot of time, more than what we should be, doing some or more than some kind of activities, for example, online gaming, for example, being online on social media, or some other kind of activities which is accessible in digital space, it can lead to its own psychological issues and problems. So to summarize this section of my presentation, there are different dimensions that we need to be aware of in context of psychological issues of cyber safety. It includes things like being a victim of a scam, online scam, phishing, malware. It includes elements such as cyber stalking, cyber grooming, cyber bullying. It includes elements of data theft, identity theft, digital footprint, accessing content which is copyright protected and using it as if you think or you believe that it belongs to you. And finally, that dimension where being in digital space, doing acceptable activities which are normal for most of the people, but we are spending too much time on these activities, and as a result we end up experiencing certain negative effects or negative psychological consequences. So there are multiple avenues or channels through which we can experience adverse psychological effects while we are being in the digital space. Now let's learn what kind of psychological issues or consequences one can experience because of these behaviors or these actions at one's end. Now the first kind of, or the first set of negative experience, I would say, which happens immediately after one experiences or goes through any of these actions or activities or behaviors, is experiencing certain negative emotional reactions. When you are at the receiving end of any of these actions or activities, it makes you panic, it makes you fearful, it makes you anxious, you may even feel frustrated, and you may even feel angry. These are all negative emotions which are not pleasant, which one doesn't want to feel or go through, but these are the usual or expected reactions to going through certain actions or behaviors that you don't like, that are not good for you, that are not pleasant for you. So this is something which is experienced by most, if not all, individuals if they are experiencing any of the dimensions that I talked about in the first section. So this is where it begins. But this is not all. It can last for a variable duration, depending on how you perceive it, depending on what was the severity of the action or the behavior. It may last from a few hours to many days, months, or even years at times, depending on the kind of behavior that was being pursued and the kind of reaction or the response that was there at your end. So it can be short-lasting or even long-lasting. Besides these negative emotional experiences, it is also not very uncommon that some of the people who are at the receiving end, or who are the people who have suffered because of these behaviors while being in cyberspace, it may lead to a very strange reaction, which is the reaction of blaming oneself. That I am a victim of cyberbullying because of something wrong that I did, or I have experienced cyber stalking because I did something wrong. So this again is a very unhealthy kind of a reaction, where a person finds faults with his or her own actions and behaviors and tries to kind of explain the experience in terms of their own fault, and they then get into this guilt trap from where it might get very difficult to come out. Not only that, they also might start feeling helpless. They might have this emotional state of mind, or this kind of a cognition or thought process, where they start believing that since they have already been through this, there is nothing that can be done now. Things are not going to change, they are not going to improve, nobody can help them, and they might have to go through this emotional state for a long time. So they start believing that they can't do anything about it, and then they go into that spiral where those negative emotional states, they tend to linger on for even long durations of time. So this is another set of negative emotional experiences or psychological consequences that people go through when they are experiencing these events in the cyberspace. Another lasting feeling that can persist, and which may be very difficult to shake off in certain individuals, is that even when this event is over, they might not find the closure, they might still remain skeptical, they might still feel vulnerable all the time, and they might be very hesitant to go back to cyberspace, even when this is needed, even when somebody assures or ensures that it's going to be safe this time, because what you are going to access is very different from what you are trying to do the previous time. But since you have had a very terrible or a very bad experience in the past, you venture into cyberspace with a great deal of skepticism, and you are always on a lookout, or you are always expecting that something might go wrong again. And this again means that either you try to avoid being in cyberspace, or you pursue it with great negative emotional state, which is not a very pleasant experience to have. And this again can last for months or even years at times. That's not all. I mentioned individual can experience different kind of negative emotional states, but it can worsen, and it can worsen to an extent where you may experience certain mental disorders. Now, the difference is negative emotional state is these are emotions that come, they go away, they may stay for a while, but you might in between those phases be able to feel happy or good or normal. But at times what happens is individuals who have these negative experiences, they can experience what are called as mental disorders, which are diagnosable mental health conditions. And one of these includes acute stress disorder, which is a kind of a mental health condition or a mental health disorder, which tends to happen within the first 4 weeks or within the first month of experiencing a negative event, or an event that was perceived as negative by a person. And it has its own set of signs and symptoms. Besides the negative mood, a person has intrusion symptoms, which means that you have a recollection of what has happened to you. The memories, they come back to you. You may have nightmares where you have recollection of the events that happened to you in the past. You may kind of dissociate yourself from the reality around you. You may not connect with the world around you the way you used to do it earlier. So those are the kind of dissociative symptoms they may be there. Then there are avoidance symptoms, which means that anything that reminds you of that past event, you try to avoid it. It may be as extreme as that you don't want to use any digital device, or you don't want to use internet at all. And finally, there can be arousal symptoms in terms of a person is not relaxed, a person is always on an alert, hyper vigilant, uh, always on a lookout that what else can go wrong with me in my life. So this is one set of psychiatric disorders that can happen in people who experience those negative events. Besides that, we all know about depressive and anxiety disorders, some of the most common psychiatric disorder that people experience, and people who have been who have experienced negative events in cyberspace, any kind of events that I have described earlier, they are also prone to experience depressive and anxiety disorders. Now again, when I use the word disorder, I don't mean just being sad. It means that they have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder which will require a proper management plan if a person has to come out of it. So those negative emotional states, they can progress into a full-blown depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder. This again is very problematic, A, because it is very distressing for the person, and B, it impacts their functioning quite significantly. Functioning in the family, functioning in the school, functioning at workplace, interpersonal situations. So there are different kind of negative effects it can have on the person who is going through these. Now, that was one set of psychological issues that can happen. The second set of psychological issues that one can experience is in context of the excessive time that people spend while being in cyberspace or digital space. Now this again, even people who are spending excessive time in digital space, they can experience the psychological consequences or impact that I have recently described in the first section of this part 2. But there are certain unique aspects that come into play when we think and when we talk about spending excessive time in digital space. Now, besides the time being spent in digital space, there is another determinant of these outcomes or these negative consequences, and that is the intent or the expectation with which the person approaches digital space. So what it means is that, yes, if you are spending more than what you should be spending in terms of time, that leads to problem. But besides that, even if you're not spending too much time, but if you are accessing digital space for the wrong reasons or with the wrong intent and wrong expectations, still some of the problems can come up. And I'll explain it in greater details now. So one of the things that happens, and I will take examples of using social media. So people post their thoughts, their views, their comments, their memories, their pictures, their videos on social media, and they can do it with multiple intent. One could be that you just want to share what's there in your mind or an experience that you have been through. It could also mean that you are trying to share it with people and you are expecting their reactions, or it may be something that you think people are going to like and they are going to react in a way that you are going to appreciate or like. But it might not end up the same way because the way people are going to react depends on them. So if your expectation was that when I post something, everybody around me who is there, part of my group, and even beyond my group, should share it, should like it, should comment on it in a positive way. If that doesn't happen, and if that is the yardstick that you choose to assess your comment, the value of your post, or the importance of the picture that you have posted there, then it leads to a feeling of poor self-esteem. Because now you are judging yourself through the eyes of people who are responding to what you have posted there. It can lead to negative self-image. You may start believing that since people don't like or they didn't like what you posted, it means it was not worth it. Or people don't like you as a person in general. Or you are not good enough for people to kind of like you. So this is a very common thing that happens in context of social media use, where expectations of people go beyond sharing what they want, and they are expecting something in return, and which becomes a way for them to judge themselves. through the eyes of others. So this is another set of issues that people can experience if they use social media for the wrong reasons or with the wrong intent. Another issue that people commonly experience in context of using, being in digital space excessively, could be disturbances of sleep-wake cycle. This happens especially when you are in digital space at wrong hours. Maybe you are using it very late at night. You are spending too much time. You are remaining awake because you want to be online, play that online game with your friends, or you are communicating with somebody using a social media account. So it interferes with your sleep-wake cycle. Since you sleep late, you will wake up late. Even if you wake up early, you may not be as fresh the next day. So it creates problem with your sleep-wake cycle. Also, it interferes with your eating habits as well. There are examples that come to us in our clinic where there are students who ignore their meals, who tend to prefer something that they can eat very quickly. And this all leads to issues like weight gain and obesity related problems. It can also lead to poor dietary habits. And since these are developing during those formative years, during adolescence and childhood, they can stay with the person even when they grow up. So that's another kind of negative impact that they can experience. Finally, another area of great interest these days that people have started to talk about a lot more than before is that using internet excessively in a problematic pattern, something that people commonly describe as addiction. And this again has been described to multiple elements in cyberspace, for example, internet addiction, gaming addiction, social media addiction. People have also talked about addiction to mobile devices. So what this means is that a person is using cyberspace or a digital world in a way that is leading to problems, and problems in a very unique way or in a very unique sense. And how that problem reflects is, there is loss of control. What that means is that usually human beings, when we engage in any behavior, usually we know when to start, how much to engage in the behavior, what is the time to stop, what is the occasion when not to engage in that particular behavior, and when it won't be appropriate to engage in that particular kind of behavior. But when we lose control, something that happens when we develop an addiction, what happens is that we are not able to choose when to stop. We are not able to choose or decide that, okay, I have done this enough and now it's going to go bad for me because my parents don't like it, or I'm taking time out of my studying hours, or it is leading to other kind of problems in my life, but still I can't stop. That is the loss of control. Not just that, what happens at times is that although you are aware that your excessive engagement or your excessive presence in digital space is causing problems. These may be academic problems, these may be interpersonal issues, these may even be financial issues because you are spending money while you are engaging in these behaviors online. But despite of knowing that there is a problem, you can't help it and you continue to engage in that behavior. That again is a very strong indicator that you might be having what is called as addiction. And finally, it is usually accompanied by people taking time out of alternate activities, including activities of their interest. Earlier, there was a student who was good at playing football, but now since he or she is playing, being online or playing an online game or spending excessive time on social media, the time is being taken away from playing soccer or football, and that performance on soccer field is going down. It may impact their academic activities, extracurricular activities. They may be taking time away from their interaction with the family members around them because they want to go back to their room and start playing that game again as soon as they can. So neglect of alternate activities, which includes responsibilities as well as pleasant or pleasurable activities. So when these three things are there, when these three manifestations they are present, we see this kind of a behavior as a reflection on addiction. Now, interestingly, traditionally, people have equated addiction typically in context of substance use, for example, alcohol, tobacco, and other kind of drugs. But recently, what has happened is that some of these actions or activities that we engage in digital space, they have been recognized as potentially leading to what are known as addictive behaviors. So World Health Organization, for example, a couple of years back, they have come out with this term called as gaming disorder. So what it means is that if you engage in an online or offline game in a way which leads to loss of control, which leads to neglect of alternate activities, and if you are not able to control it despite of negative consequences, you can be diagnosed with a mental disorder. So it has been recognized a valid diagnosable mental health condition these days. So these set of behaviors are known as addictive behaviors. So this is the other kind of consequence in terms of psychological effect that can happen. But this should not be seen only in terms of what a person is going through. So usually or typically what happens is we think or we believe that psychological issues mean that issue the particular person or an individual is experiencing. But please bear in mind that whenever a person is going through a negative emotional state or is having a psychological issue or a psychological problem, it does not remain to themselves. It extends beyond them. For example, a person or a child or a student who is engaging excessively in online games, and because of that his or her academic performance is going down, it will impact his interaction with his parents. If there is a child who is trying to go back to his or her room, kind of eating the meals quickly, not sitting on the table, talking to the parents, it is going to lead to interpersonal problems as well. So the psychological issues ultimately they extend beyond the realm of that individual, and it impacts people around them as well. And in fact, in my opinion, it should be seen as a set of interconnected problems. So you experience a negative event, or you are spending too much time being in cyberspace, it impacts you individually psychologically, but in the process or and over time, it will affect your interaction with people around you. That includes your family, your friends, your teachers, your colleagues, and it leads to more problems over time. And these problems are all interconnected, but at the core, there will lie those problems that a person or an individual is going through. So to summarize this section of my presentation, there can be multiple kind of psychological consequences that a person can go through in context of the different dimensions of cyberspace that I talked about and cyber safety. These could be negative emotional reactions, a tendency to blame oneself, feeling of helplessness, feeling of vulnerability, experiencing mental disorders like depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, disturbance with the sleep and appetite, poor self-esteem, even addictions can develop, and it can lead to different kind of problems which are interrelated or interconnected with each other. Now, finally, I move on to the third section of my presentation and the last section, where I'll discuss with you what is it that we can do at our end so that we can ensure that we are psychologically not going through these negative impacts or these negative consequences, and we can be in cyberspace without experiencing any of these negative consequences. Many of the suggestions that I'm going to give you are very common sense or very simplistic kind of suggestions that you might have heard of. But please remember, the way we interact with digital space, this is an action or activity we usually do on a day-to-day basis, multiple times. So if we want to ensure that we are psychologically healthy while we are in digital space, we have to take multiple small little steps. We have to do all these small multiple actions on a daily basis. We have to bring these things into our daily routine so that we develop a pattern of life which helps us sustain our psychological well-being while we encounter these negative experiences. First is being aware. Now, this is the first thing that we need to start with. whenever we access any digital space, we need to be aware of the pitfalls. We need to be aware of what can go wrong. We need to be aware of what kind of threats might be present there. We need to be aware of how our behavior or our interaction with cyberspace can lead to negative consequences. So that is the first thing. Please don't use digital devices. Please don't use internet assuming that it's absolutely safe all the time for all of us. There are threats that are there, and we need to be aware that they exist, and we need to be prepared for that. So that's the first step that we need to start with. Second is, at our own end, we must try to practice cyber safe behavior. Now again, this probably will be discussed in greater detail in another session, but simple things like using a secure internet connection, checking you are accessing the right kind of website, not clicking on the links that you receive on your email and those that look suspicious, not befriending people on your social media account whom you don't know or whom you have not met in person. These simple steps or following these simple principles can reduce the risk of experiencing those negative events while we are in cyberspace. Be mindful of your expectations. Whenever you engage in a behavior, know why you are engaging in that behavior. What is that this platform is going to offer you? What is it that you expect from it? Again, going back to that example of using social media. Social media is a great tool. It helps us connect with people around us. It helps us make friends. But please be mindful of what you are expecting when you are posting something out there. If your expectation is you want people to know what you are thinking, there is nothing wrong with that. But if you want to judge whether the post you put out there was good enough, simply based on how others react to it, that may not be a very healthy approach, because it might so happen that others may not like it because that's their perspective. So please don't have unreasonable expectations from the cyberspace. It can offer you information, it can be a source of communication, it can be a means to access entertainment. But please be aware that what limitations this cyberspace has. Please don't expect things which it can't offer. Please don't depend on it for those reasons. Develop resilience. And this again is something which will help you beyond cyberspace. And what that means is prepare yourself to handle adverse situations better. Try to develop coping skills. Use or do or engage in activities that help you handle your stress. Engage in activities that help you cope with a challenging situation in a better way. This again is not a one-time thing that you can just do today and for the rest of life you cannot, you can expect the returns on it. It has to be done on a day-to-day basis. This can be doing some physical activity, yoga, meditation, talking to people with whom you like to talk to, things like that, which can help you in being more relaxed, being more calm, and being able to handle stress in a more positive way, in a more healthy way. Be aware not only of what you are doing online, but also how much you are doing it. A very, very simplistic approach to this could be that don't be on digital devices when you are supposed to do something else. Don't be on a digital devices when it's time to eat. Don't be on digital devices when it's time to sleep. So please don't try to take away time from these activities which are important on a day-to-day basis. That can be a very simplistic way of ensuring that you are not overdoing any of these things. Please don't use cyberspace as a substitute for a physical or an in-person setting. So what you can do in physical world, what you can do in in-person setting, don't try to do it over cyberspace. Don't use it as a substitute. If you want to meet somebody and if you can meet them face to face, that might be a more enriching experience than communicating with them over social media. So don't use it as a substitute. Use it only when the other option is not viable or not feasible. Follow a routine, a very simplistic advice which works all the time. Make a timetable, keep time slots for everything that you do, and it includes time for playing those games, interacting with your friends over social media, but designate a particular time and don't eat into the time that is meant for other activities for the reason of engaging in cyberspace related activities. The basic principle that we need to follow is quite simple, that our aim should be to lead a balanced, healthy life. And these digital devices, presence in digital space or cyberspace is one of the elements of this, but that's not the whole life. So let's try to find a way to live a life where we are in digital space when we need it and we are out of it when we don't need it. Finally, please be prepared to seek formal help. For example, if you develop a mental disorder, if you are going through a negative emotional experience and you think you can't handle it at your own level, or you see somebody whom you love who is not able to handle these issues at their level, please consult a mental health professional. It could be a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. If you are a victim of certain crimes online or certain actions which are illegal, you can take legal recourse, and I believe that again will be covered in another session in greater details. Please remember, when we talk of cyberspace, we are talking about cyberspace human interaction. Cyberspace is good. It offers a lot of good to us, but it's the way we interact with it that determines or defines the eventual consequences. So let's try to be safe and stay healthy in cyberspace, and we are able to make the most out of it. So I'll stop with that, and I thank you for your patience listening.
And so much in detail. So thank you so much once again. And it was wonderful to know all the information regarding the psychological aspects. One thing I would like to ask you that towards the end you mentioned that if anyone went through any kind of hacking or phishing or any such thing, they can take the legal recourse. So would you like to tell us that if in case they want to take the legal action, what would that be? As in contacting the police or cyber cell or any helpline number? Please shed some light over it.
So if you are a student who has been a victim of any of those experiences, there is a law in the country which kind of takes care of those offenses. All these actions and activities that I have listed, they are prohibited by the law. And if you have experienced any of that, you must contact the local police. They will guide you, they will register a case against these perpetrators, even if there is a case of, say, data theft. Or if you find that something that you did not intend to be there on digital space or a particular place there, which exists there against your wish and will, even in these cases you can approach the local police. And there are provisions in the law that guide the legal system and the police to take actions against these people. The police is also authorized to approach these online platforms, social media platforms, and there are many examples where they have cooperated and they have helped to bring that content down from their website. Even in cases of financial frauds, you must contact your bank immediately as soon as that happens, and you should bring it to their cognizance. And there are provisions and measures in the system which can help you kind of it doesn't guarantee that it will bring back that traumatic and everything will be fine. But yes, there is a legal recourse that exists, so that there is a remedy in place. There are provisions which can kind of reduce the financial losses that you have experienced, and if the perpetrator is found, they will be punished depending on the law that exists.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering the query that we had. I would like to thank you once again for being a part of this program, for giving us your valuable time and these valuable inputs. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the viewers for being a part of this program. I really hope that this information was helpful to you. And if in case you have missed watching this program, you can always watch it on NCRT Official. Now let me tell you how to be a participant in this particular program. All you have to do is type CIET in your browser in Google, and the first page of CIET, the front page, will be opened. Let me show you how it goes. So that would be the first page you can see here. Yes, you can see multiple options here. Click on events. The third last option is workshop/training. Scroll it further. Here is the current activity. You can see it's online training on safety and security in digital space. Please click on it. Once you click on it, scroll it further. This is the entire information. What is the reason behind this training, and the schedule has been mentioned. The detailing, the objectives, who all can participate, everything has been mentioned. The entire schedule of 5 days is here, and this is the QR code. Just scan it and be a participant, or click on this link, fill the form and be a participant in this program. Please don't forget to register yourself, and here the quiz link will be given to you on 9th of June, that is Friday at 6 p.m. after we are done with our 5th class. So you can participate in the quiz, and if in case you score more than 70%, you will be eligible for the participation certificate. If you have any feedback regarding this is the link. Please share your feedback whenever you want. And this is the email ID through which you can share your queries, your questions anytime you want. And this is the link where our earlier sessions have been uploaded, the day 1 and day 2. And today was day 3. And this program will also be uploaded in this particular link. Let me please show you the screen once again. Here is everything regarding online training on safety and security in digital space. So tomorrow we'll discuss another aspect of cyber safety and security, that would be the legal aspect. Today we discussed the psychological aspect, yesterday was technical aspect, and tomorrow would be the legal aspects. So keep your questions ready, and for now we are wrapping up this particular program. Upcoming next is Sahayog, guidance for mental well-being of the children, and the topic of discussion would be bouncing back, reflecting to know your strengths and abilities. Stay here, keep your questions ready, and for information regarding NCERT textbooks, it's being shown on your screens at the moment in the form of ticker. Please give them a read, or if in case you want to know more, we repeat this information in each and every session of ours. I hope you do not miss it and buy your NCERT textbooks very soon. I am Tanvi Khurana. I'll take a leave of you. Please have a great day ahead and take care of yourself. Namaskar.